greatest form of despair is not being who you really are. Have you ever had everything and still felt like something was missing? We live in a time where we have more choices, more comfort, and more connections than we ever imagined. And yet, paradoxically, we're a generation marked by a constant sense of incompleteness. It's like, even surrounded by abundance, there's a part of us that still doesn't feel at home in the world, a quiet emptiness we just can't seem to name. Centuries ago, the philosopher Blaise Pascal warned us, all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. But is silence really the root of all our unhappiness? Or is there something deeper, something that comes from within, something we've been taught to ignore, yet our soul has been quietly trying to show us all along? In this video, we'll explore the pain of emptiness, not as something to fear, but as a calling, a silent request from the soul that often goes unnoticed, but never really goes away. We're going to dive into why we feel like something's missing, what this quiet sadness is trying to reveal, and how we can begin to truly listen to it. It's hard to put this sadness into words. It doesn't have a clear cause or a logical explanation. There's no big traumatic event, no obvious reason. It's just there. Sometimes it shows up first thing in the morning, right after waking up, when you ask yourself, why do I feel so tired, even though I slept well? Other times, it creeps in during a conversation, when everyone around you is laughing, and even though you're right there with them, you feel completely out of place. Or it hits at the end of an ordinary day, when the silence of your room reminds you that something essential is missing, something you still haven't been able to find. This sadness doesn't scream, it whispers, and that's why, more often than not, we ignore it. We try to fill the emptiness with distractions, a podcast, a video, a show, any random commitment. We fill the empty space with everything except our own presence. But the emptiness we feel isn't weakness. It's a signal, a sign that something inside us is being neglected. Maybe it's time to admit that we're living a life that seems right on the surface, but deep down, it isn't really ours. Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in psychology, once said, "No one becomes enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And maybe that darkness is exactly this quiet sadness, a muffled cry from the soul, asking for something we don't fully understand yet. Authenticity. It's not the sadness of failure, like many assume. It can show up even when everything seems to be going well. Because yes, life might be functioning just fine, but if what's behind it isn't true, if it's not genuine, the emptiness shows up anyway, unyielding. This sadness is the price of disconnection, not disconnection from the world around us, but from ourselves. We live in the era of constant filling, where every second of silence is instantly covered up. Every hint of emptiness is quickly silenced by a click, a notification, a song, a video. We've never been so distracted, and yet so emotionally starved. It's like we're constantly running from something we don't know how to name. Silence has become a mirror, and instead of facing our reflection, we do everything we can to avoid it. This constant hyperconnection has created a paradox. We have access to everything, and yet, somehow, we've lost touch with ourselves. True connection, the kind that fulfills us and gives life meaning, feels further and further away. And deep down, we know it. But why do we still keep trying to fill the emptiness with things that are fleeting and hollow? What are we really trying to avoid? Aldous Huxley, in his iconic book Brave New World, predicted what many now call modern-day slavery, not through direct oppression, but through excessive pleasure. He wrote, "People will come to love their oppression, to adore the technologies that undo their capacity to think." And that's exactly the world we live in. Social media sells us promises of belonging, recognition, happiness, but all of it comes in quick, fleeting, superficial doses, and what's left after it all fades, an echo, an even deeper emptiness. The philosopher Byung-Chul Han, in his analysis of modern society, talks about what he calls the burnout society. We're constantly under pressure to produce more, improve more, optimize more. We live at such a fast pace that there's no room left to feel, no time to truly listen to ourselves. And that's exactly why the emptiness grows. It grows because it's not being heard. Because in our culture, we're taught to avoid pain at all costs. If it hurts, distract yourself. If it feels empty, fill it up. But no one teaches us how to face the emptiness, to understand it. The emptiness we feel isn't due to a lack of stimulation. It's because of too much of it. It's the absence of the essential, buried beneath a mountain of noise and superficiality. When everything around us is noise, silence becomes a threat. But it's in that very silence that healing begins. From the earliest days of philosophy, thinkers have pondered a question that echoes deep within the human soul. Why is it that even when we have everything, we sometimes feel like we have nothing? Jean-Paul Sartre, one of the great names of existentialism, believed this feeling of emptiness is a direct result of our freedom. To him, human beings are condemned to be free. In other words, we're free to choose, to create our identity, to give our life meaning. But with that freedom comes a heavy weight, anxiety. The anxiety of knowing there's no pre-written path, no guarantees, no defined essence. For Sartre, man is nothing more than what he makes of himself. And it's exactly this nothing we feel, this blank space, this lack of a script, this overwhelming freedom that, instead of setting us free, often paralyzes us. The emptiness we carry isn't just about lacking material things or external achievements. It's a reflection of that same freedom, of that absence of certainty, of that silence that, rather than comforting us, ends up scaring us. In a society that teaches us to fill every second with stimulation, emptiness becomes intolerable. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and survivor of Auschwitz, was one of the first to recognize existential emptiness as a silent epidemic in modern society. He noticed that when we lose connection to a greater purpose, we fall into a deep state of frustration, what he called existential vacuum. For Frankl, this vacuum is fed by our constant pursuit of pleasure, power, or recognition, all of which are fragile substitutes for true meaning. He once wrote, "Life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose." In today's world, we're constantly pushed to chase external goals, success, recognition, status. But what happens when you achieve all of that and still feel empty? The truth is, this emptiness doesn't come from failure. It comes from searching outside for something that can only be built within. Friedrich Nietzsche, with his piercing insight into the modern soul, once said that we've become sick animals, lost between the collapse of old beliefs and the absence of new ones. We live among spiritual ruins. We no longer believe in the old gods, but we haven't yet created new meanings. This existential void, this in-between, may not be here to destroy us, but to provoke us, to challenge us to create something new, to dive deeper into who we truly are. It forces us to ask ourselves, what truly makes my life worth living? There is no ready-made answer to that question, but one thing is certain: as long as we keep running from it, the sadness and emptiness won't leave. This existential emptiness isn't a mistake. It's an invitation to something deeper, to something more real. At some point in life, we begin drifting away from who we really are, first to please others, then just to survive. Little by little, we start playing roles that work socially, but drain us internally. Carl Jung called this phenomenon the persona, the mask we wear to be accepted in the world. It's useful, even necessary, but the real trouble begins when we confuse ourselves with that mask, when we forget that we are so much more than what we show to the world. This disconnection doesn't happen all at once. It's subtle. It's a slow drift. One day you stay silent just to avoid upsetting someone. The next, you fake enthusiasm. Then, you start convincing yourself that the path you chose was the only one available. And before you know it, you no longer know what you want. You no longer know what you feel. And worst of all, you no longer know who you are. And that's when the emptiness starts to grow. It's not just a void. It's the space between who you truly are and who you've been pretending to be. Carl Jung once wrote, "What you resist persists. What you accept transforms." And what we've been resisting with everything we have is our authenticity, that part of us that wants to say no when everyone else says yes. That voice that whispers, "This doesn't feel right," but gets silenced by the fear of being rejected. As we drift away from our essence, we enter a state of inner alienation. The soul begins to suffer, not because we made a mistake, but because we forgot. We forgot what moves us, what touches us, what makes us feel truly alive. So the emptiness we feel isn't an enemy to fear. It's a signal, a call to return to our center, an invitation to stop running and start listening to that quiet inner voice we've been drowning out with the noise of modern life. That emptiness, that sadness with no name, is not a flaw. It's a sign that the journey toward our true self still needs to be taken. And the first step, to look inward, to accept the pain of the emptiness, and to let it transform us. Sadness, then, is no longer just a symptom. It becomes a cry a silent cry from deep within, from something inside us that longs to breathe again. And here lies the paradox. What we're missing isn't out there. It's not in achievements, relationships, or external validation. What we truly seek is the way back in. The emptiness we feel is not a sign of failure. It's a compass pointing us home. There's a kind of pain that isn't physical, a sorrow that doesn't come from visible loss. It rises from a quiet, hidden place. The pain of not living in alignment with who we really are. Carl Jung didn't hesitate to name this for what it was, a sickness of the soul. The soul begins to suffer when we stop listening to it, when we ignore its most authentic desires, when we follow paths that lead us further and further from our true center. What we call emptiness, that strange space that seems to drain all meaning, is often the soul's clearest cry to come back. Modern culture has taught us that sadness is weakness, but in truth, sadness is a call to listen. Emptiness isn't a problem to be fixed. It's a space to be understood. It appears when life becomes too shallow, when everything is movement, but nothing is connection, when there are relationships, but no intimacy, when there are goals, but no meaning. It's the soul whispering, "You're forgetting me." And the greatest trap we can fall into is trying to silence that voice, numbing the call, chasing instant relief, stacking achievements like bricks to cover the growing hollow within. But the emptiness doesn't go away. It waits. It returns. It comes back in the stillness, in the quiet, in those moments when the world stops and it speaks. It takes courage to listen, courage to stop running, courage to face the truth that maybe what we call sadness is actually a truth trying to be born. Many transformations begin right here, in the pain of emptiness, in the deep discomfort of realizing that life, as it is, no longer fits. But this is not the end. It's the beginning of a return to what is essential, a descent into what is most true. Because every soul that has grown weary still has the power to awaken. After the fall comes the silence. After the pain comes the listening. And it is in this bare, uncomfortable, revealing space that the possibility of reunion is born. Because the emptiness does not want to devour you. It wants you to stop. Stop running. Stop distracting yourself. Stop losing yourself. It wants you to look, to feel, to come back. The reconnection begins small. It begins when you choose to sit with the discomfort instead of escaping it. It begins when you ask yourself, perhaps for the first time in a long time, what do I really need? And the answers don't come from the outside. They come from within. The silence, once feared, becomes a shelter. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of presence. The kind where you no longer hide from yourself. The kind where you finally begin to hear. And when you listen, you begin to remember. Remember what once made your heart beat faster. Remember what you left behind. Remember who you are beneath the masks, the roles, the expectations. Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why can endure almost any how." And here lies the key. Emptiness is not healed by distraction. It is healed by meaning, not by more goals, but by real presence. Meaning doesn't have to be grand. It can be born in something simple, in caring for someone, in creating something, in committing to truth, in walking in honesty with yourself. And it is in that simplicity that the emptiness begins to transform. It stops being a hole and becomes a space, a fertile ground where something new can grow, something more authentic, more gentle, more true. Sadness slowly begins to dissolve, not because life became perfect, but because life finally started to make sense. Perhaps what we call emptiness is not a flaw, but a reminder that there is something within us that needs to be seen, a quiet request for pause, for listening, for presence. We live rushing, seeking, filling, but there is a silent wisdom in the void. It doesn't appear to destroy us, it appears to awaken us. That quiet sadness we feel without any apparent reason might be the soul saying, I don't want to just survive. I want to truly live. And to truly live doesn't mean to be happy all the time. It means to be whole. It means allowing yourself to feel, to question, to fall into silence. It means being honest with yourself, even if that honesty costs you some of your old certainties. The emptiness might just be the beginning of everything, the beginning of a more authentic life, a life connected to what truly matters, a life where silence no longer frightens, because within it, truth lives. And now, perhaps the real question is no longer, why do I feel this way? But what is this emptiness trying to show me? And you, have you ever felt this silent sadness, as if something essential was missing, even when everything seemed fine? Share your experience in the comments. Let's turn this emptiness into a space of reconnection together.